I've clicked onto the Global Tropical Overview for March the 18th, 2024. As is always the case in these videos, thoughts that expressed are mine alone, and when making any decisions ahead of tropical cyclones, look to the local weather office, local emergency management, and local tropical cyclone warning center. So we have our same two systems active north of Australia today. We've got Tropical Cyclone Megan here in the Gulf of Carpentaria, still tracking south towards the Northern Territories coastline. This will be the first system we talk about, but we'll also touch on Tropical Low 8 and an update to its track as it sits north of Western Australia as we begin the new work week. I'll leave a timestamp to that so you can skip ahead to that if you need to, but we're going to start off with Megan like we did yesterday. And you can already tell just the slow movement of the storm. If you look at where it was 24 hours ago when I made my last video, it was about here in the central, or I guess this is still the southwestern part of the Gulf of Carpentaria. And in that past day, it's only made about this much progress towards the south. And that is not a lot of movement for a tropical cyclone in a day. And this is just very slow movement. This forward motion right now is only about 2 or 3 knots right now. Yesterday when I made my video, it was more around 5 knots, so it has slowed down even more. Is it possible it slows down even more? It's possible, but already very slow movement. Now, the good news is the storm has been struggling today in the face of some wind shear, and finally, later today, we'll get the system to come ashore, likely within the next 12 hours along this part of the coastline in the Northern Territories. But regardless of intensity, this system is going to continue bringing significant impacts that it has over the past day. You can see all these outer bands continuing to feed right into the coastline, and these will still hold the threat for potential tornadoes, storm surge along the immediate coastline, and the potential for heavy rainfall, especially where they train like this band is that you see well east of the storm is doing right now. But the main action is still here in this eye. It has continued to struggle to close off the eastern eye wall, and I'll show you a microwave pass that we got several hours ago. This was almost a day ago, but it's very representative of the impacts the shear is having on the storm. You can see this is a low-level look at the structure of the system yesterday afternoon. Here's the low-level center, and the shear had started to kick up a little bit more by this time, and you can see now this mid-level low is well to the west of the low-level center. So we have a little bit of tilt with height, and it's likely that this has persisted. And alongside that, the wind shear has continued to keep thunderstorms from wrapping around. I talked about that yesterday. The key thing for the storm was, could it wrap convection around onto this eastern side? And from what I have seen, it only managed to do that once. And as soon as it got that done, the shear just opened it right back up. And you can see here, there's really no thunderstorms on the eastern side of this. Now, it's possible there's still some stronger thunderstorms here in the low levels. This radar beam is quite high up into the atmosphere by the point it gets out to the eye. But main point being that the strongest thunderstorms are more like this around the storm. It's not fully closed. And because of that, the storm really has not been rapidly intensifying over the past day. Up till last night, it had been rapidly intensifying. It did meet the criteria. But since then, it's slowed down significantly, and in fact, it looks like it may have peaked in intensity and might be gradually weakening now. Now, that's a key term, gradually weakening, because this system is not going to be weakening at a fast rate. The shear right now, and you might be able to see it on the visible satellite loop, it's not very inhibitive overall. It's not going to quickly disrupt the storm and quickly cause it to weaken. It is putting pressure upon it, and it is causing that tilt, which has stopped it from intensifying, but it's still able to maintain its current intensity. And it's likely that the system will still remain very powerful as it comes right towards the coastline and makes landfall here. Right now, winds are estimated to be about 90 knots from the Joint Typhoon Warning Center. The peak intensity was about 95. Maybe we could see a 5 or 10 knot decrease in that before landfall, but that's still very significant winds along the coastline. And the worst part is, because of the slow movement, you're going to have prolonged winds of that speed along the coastline where it makes landfall, and that could absolutely cause a lot of issues along the coastline. You can see the shear. If we look at the water vapor loop, you can see the counterclockwise spin of the upper level ridge developing over Queensland and the Coral Sea. Like I talked about yesterday, this is bringing a lot of northerly and northeasterly flow over the system, and while the system is tracking in that direction, it's just so slow, as you can see there on radar. So this shear is really having a more detrimental impact on it. And you can see the significance of that shear from the HAFS model. This is a sounding over it, and there's your strong flow from that ridge, resulting in a shear of about 20 knots. And the 10 to 15 knots, storms can usually fight that off. Once you get up towards 20 knots, that's high vertical wind shear, getting towards that, and storms usually begin to struggle around there. But as the system does come in, we're still looking at very significant rainfall despite the weakening trend that we were seeing. You can see there on the forecast from the HAFS model, still potential for 300 plus millimeters of rainfall over an area that has likely gotten a ton of rainfall over the past day. It's been raining over this area for a long time. It's the past day, maybe even more than that. So we're looking at very significant rainfall totals continuing here. And for those along this portion of the coastline, it's still important that you stay tuned to the Bureau of Meteorology and your local emergency management so you know if there are flooding issues going on and the potential for severe weather. As I mentioned, the outer bands on the eastern side of this could have tornadoes as they come ashore. This is the current forecast cone, though, from the Bureau of Meteorology. You can see current intensity Category 3 and forecast to remain a Category 3 over the course of the day today as it comes towards landfall. And that landfall time frame is looking to be late this afternoon into this evening. You can see this forecast point just on shore is about 7 p.m. tonight. So a very rough forecast here for the nighttime in this part of the coastline, and I hope everyone is safe ahead of the storm. As we get towards Tuesday and Wednesday, the storm will begin to track away from the area, and impact should start to die down, especially as the storm weakens. It will weaken pretty quickly after landfall here. We're now going to move west. We're going to talk about, again, tropical low 8. Here it is off the coastline of Western Australia, still sitting here. Like I talked about a couple days ago, it's just going to be sitting here over the course of the weekend and into early of the week. You can see Western Australia there along that part of the coastline, and this system is doing a little bit better now. The shear has tapered off a bit. You can see there might be some evidence of still some shear, some thunderstorms going up east of the storm, having their tops blown off towards the west. And this could still put some pressure upon it, but the shear is not looking very too strong. And overall, the system looks much more healthy, convective-wise, than it did, say, a couple days ago. You can also see that there's an expanse of upper-level cirrus now to the north of the storm. This is upper-level outflow expanding away in an anticyclonic manner that's being counterclockwise, and this is a favorable look for the storm. And it's showing us that there's not really all too much shear, big shear impact, that is, impacting the storm. Again, there is a little bit of shear here. Looks like there could be maybe a little bit of an upper-level ridge here over this part of the ocean. But like I said, not very strong shear right now. Now, the good news is the storm is likely not to make landfall at this point. We talked about a couple of days ago this trough south of Australia. It was a little bit stronger. It could have potentially dragged the storm into Western Australia. The good news is that trough was not as strong as it could have been, and it did not pick up the storm. And now that that trough is going to be moving out, we're going to get a lot of high pressure building behind it, and this is going to push the storm off towards the west, harmlessly away out to sea. And this storm may become a pretty strong out to sea storm. You can see that the GFS gets it pretty strong on the model, and if we look at the 200 millibar flow plot, you can see a fairly divergent flow aloft. Now, there may be a little bit of shear here. There is some northeasterly flow coming in on the backside of this, and this storm's tracking a little bit differently than this shear flow. So that may cause a little bit of shear, but overall, we're looking at potential for maybe a strong out-to-sea storm here. And fortunately, we're not looking at a landfall here along Western Australia, and I'm sure that's very good news. And we may have dodged something here, being in peak season. You can see that change reflected in a Bureau of Meteorology forecast, with the track now having it completely go west and away from land. The Western Australia coastline is just about there, so we'll keep an eye on this as it goes out to sea. Maybe a neat looking storm on satellite if it reaches a strong peak intensity. I should mention briefly that you might see a little bit of an area of low pressure develop here on the GFS as we get towards the latter half of this week. This is what is left of Megan as it comes west throughout northern Australia. Right now, development odds are unlikely as it gets offshore. It's not even guaranteed that it will get offshore, but it's something just to keep a an eye on just in case it does move into this part of the ocean. But we do have large-scale sinking air coming across this part of the ocean, and you can see that reflected here. We just have a ton of dry air across Western Australia, and this will make any redevelopment a little bit more of a challenge for Megan if it does make it back offshore. If that potential does increase, I'll talk about it more in the future, but as of right now, not looking at any significant redevelopment odds of that. But that's all I've got for today. Again, for those in the path of Megan, stay safe. Hopefully the impacts are not too bad overall as they seem to be on this, but again, very slow movement with a storm. And when a tropical cyclone moves slow, it's never a good thing. But I'll probably have more videos out later this week, maybe talking about Tropical Low 8. I probably won't have too much more on Megan to talk about. If I have anything more to say, I'll post it on my Twitter page there, so you can see that. But I'll leave a link to the Bureau of Meteorology website so you can go to the cyclone page and get their latest bulletins, and stay tuned to their latest alerts for flooding and potential severe weather as these outer bands move in. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.